Good morning. I'm Amy Allen, Vice President at the Westchester County Association. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to our latest all-access healthcare program. These programs are designed to bring together subject matter experts to talk about issues that are important not only to healthcare providers, but to the community at large. And today's program focuses on the broader life sciences sector, which, as you will hear, is growing in strength and importance in our region. And we are fortunate to have such a distinguished group of speakers with us who will speak to both broader national and regional trends, as well as specific and exciting innovations happening right here in Westchester. Westchester is home to leading academic medical systems and a burgeoning life sciences industry. That's a powerful combination with great potential for collaborative research between clinicians and nascent and growing biotech firms. And events like this shine a spotlight on Westchester's leading role, helping to create new opportunities to solve scientific and medical breakthroughs and economic growth. We at the WCA are delighted to team up with the County Office of Economic Development on today's program. And I want to thank Deborah Novick, Director of Innovation, out there somewhere. There she is in the back. And Bridget Gibbons, Director of Economic Development, there's Bridget, for their partnership. I also want to thank all of our all-access healthcare sponsors for their support. They're too numerous to name individually, but you can see them all on the screen and in your program. I also want to recognize WCA President and CEO, Michael Romita, who's here with us this morning. Michael's there in the back. Hi, Michael. We at Westchester Westchester County has long recognized the life science sector as a key component of its economic development strategy. And here to speak to that on behalf of the county is Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins. Ken was appointed to the post of Westchester County Deputy Executive at the beginning of County Executive George Latimer's term in 2018. He has a long and distinguished career in public service, including 4 terms as a county legislator and President and CEO of the Yonkers Industrial Development Association, the mandate of which is to create job growth and economic development. Ken's community involvement also includes service on the boards of many distinguished community groups and organizations. Please welcome Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Certainly, I bring you greetings on behalf of County Executive George Latimer. It's certainly a privilege to be here with you all this morning in partnership with our great friends at the Westchester County Association, the WCA, with both Bridget Gibbons and Deb Novick here, and our entire economic development team to make sure that we're working so hard together on this very, very important conversation to have with the outstanding panelists we have this morning. Our top priority from our economic development team and for us all in Westchester is doing what we can to support and grow the life sciences here in Westchester County. To do this, we established a task force with startups, employers, and key stakeholders in the community in the life sciences and health sciences area to provide guidance on how we can support them. The result of that strategic focus has been to have tremendous growth in this particular area. Our accelerator program has supported more than 30 startups, and other life sciences companies have moved here as a result of the partnerships that we have formed through that task force. You can see that reflected in the statistics that we have here in the back of your program today. 20% of New York's life science private employment is right here in Westchester County. Our local growth is also reflected in the growth of the region, which is the topic for our panelists today. The kind of conversation and the work that we're going to continue to do together with the leadership of both Bridget and Deb, with our team, with the County Executive, George Latimer, myself, and all of us working together, Joe McDonald, with the County Association, is going to make the life science and health sciences area the premier place for us here in Westchester County. So again, have a great morning and a great, great work for Westchester County. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ken. Well, now I get to sit down and turn over the running of the hard part of the program to our moderator, Mary Howard. Mary is the principal of FirstXFounder and the program director of the Westchester County Biosciences Accelerator. Mary will introduce our panelists and take it from there. Thanks.
Well, good morning. We're going to have wonderful, quick intros here because you have a beautiful program here with the bios of the speakers who we have the privilege of hearing this morning. So we're going to hear first from Teresa. Thank you very much for joining us from Deloitte. She is with the consulting practice at Deloitte and leads the U.S. Life Science mid-market practice, and she's got some very interesting data to share with us. I certainly had never seen any of it. George Santo is here from J.P. Morgan Chase. I think for all of the people who know about the JPM conference, it's the leading conference annually in San Francisco, and he's going to put in perspective with some numbers some of the things that we're going to hear from Teresa. And then we're going to hear from our own Dr. Ratan, who's going to, the Director of Research at Burke Neuro Institute here in Westchester, and talk about some of the exciting examples of the themes that we're going to hear from both Teresa and also George. And then Deborah Viola, who is the head of research, sponsored research at Westchester Medical Center, is going to share some of what's on the ground happening right now and plan to move forward. So I'm going to turn it over immediately here to Teresa. There's a lot more about their backgrounds. They've done loads and loads of things, but let's kick it off. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm just going to try to get my mic turned on. As they said, press right here.
Let's see what we can do. Melissa, I think this is why don't
Let's try this.
Yeah, why don't we work with this while Melissa.
This too.
We're on.
Hello? Okay, great.
Good.
Good morning. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to join you today. I think it's a really important and exciting time to be in the life sciences and healthcare industry. I focus my time within the life sciences sector, and I'm just going to share some perspectives and some of the key trends that we think are incredibly relevant to, I think, what we're all going to see is what we would call the future of health. So the future of health, the moment is now. I guess I'd start by just saying, three what we think are really important hallmarks of what we see happening in the future. One, more innovation. Two, more digitization. And three, more equity. And so those three things we think are going to be really important themes for the next decade of life sciences and health. Just some quick examples of those things. Digital twins as an example, synthetic biology as an example, and on health equity, the World Economic Forum's commitment to zero health gaps by 2040, we think is a stunning and exciting commitment to more equitable health in the future, not just in the U.S., but globally. So the consulting slides are always a bit tricky, they're hard to navigate, but I'll hit the highlights here. These circles represent shifts in what we believe are observable trends across the healthcare ecosystem and really represent some important things that are shifting in the marketplace. So on the far left side, what we would call our legacy health system, we think we've really leaving behind that legacy health system, which we would characterize as being having fairly unaligned incentives and being a fairly rigid system. Whereas you can see at the bottom of that first circle, the patient or the consumer is really kind of on the outside of this very fairly rigid ecosystem. We believe that we're in wave one and moving into wave two over the next 6 to 8 years, where in wave two, we really see the patient really moving toward more the center of healthcare and health delivery. We see this time frame marked by radical data interoperability and significant investments from the tech industry as well as retail getting into healthcare. We think that the patient is going to be significantly more empowered, a lot of that driven by connected devices, and the patient's going to expect significantly more from health. We think the patient's going to expect earlier diagnosis and earlier prevention, earlier care. A little further out, we think there's some really exciting innovations in life sciences. We call it the age of biology, which will allow us to, we believe, start to really treat disease in patients at a level of N=1. Some already very exciting innovations in the pipeline toward that wave 3 age of biology. I forget I have to have mic in one hand and this in the other hand. Again, a little bit of an eye chart, but I'll just set this up. So we spend $4.1 trillion today. It's 20% of U.S. GDP on healthcare. When I started working on this analysis about 9 years ago, we were spending 15% of GDP on health. That's up to 20% now. It's the highest in the world. It's a stark number. What I think is important to share on this slide, and these three 2x2s represent a shift in the focus of that spend over time. What I think is important is today, in that 4.1 trillion spend, most of it's allocated to what we would call treating sickness. It's over half. What I think is exciting, and what we're seeing good evidence of in the market, is a shift to spend, not that the treating sickness is going to shrink or get smaller because we've got an aging population and we'll need to still care for illness, but an exciting move toward promoting health and restoring health. And we're already seeing good evidence of that in the market today. We think by 2030, we'll see just around $983 billion toward the promotion of health and about $1.2 trillion in restorative health. So these are significant trends that I think we're going to see really observable trends in the market today. Colleagues of mine at work wear the Oura ring. Does anyone have an Oura ring? Anyone? Yep, one hand went up. So, the Oura ring can predict really important health benefits. It can predict menstrual cycle. I would have benefited from that about 10 or 15 years ago. It can predict gaps in caloric burn rate so that you can go ahead and maybe take another half-mile walk before you get home, before you turn in for the evening. And it can predict blood oxygen levels. So significant advances in what I would call restoring health and promotion of health. And, we spend 80% of our treating sickness spend today is on 20% of the population. So if you just think about that and the potential shift toward more money into prevention of illness, I think it's a pretty exciting future. So I think I should wrap it up here. I just maybe hit one more slide, which is, I'll just hit the right side just to summarize. I think the future of health drivers, to hit these real quickly, consumerism, we see the patient very much showing up in a significant way in the future of health. Data sharing, behavior change and nudging, that's a really big topic today, and a lot of innovation happening around nudging in health. Significant continued innovation, data interoperability, connected devices, connected systems is going to allow us to have much more rapid insight generation. I was so happy. I was at, actually I've got a torn rotator cuff that I'm working on in my right shoulder, and I was thrilled because I had 3 different appointments, and every appointment they had all my data, all my diagnostics were there, and we could move more rapidly into a discussion of treatment. Platforms and ecosystems are going to be an important topic. I think we're going to see value creation generated across much more connected ecosystems. I'm working today on a virtual reality program in interventional heart care where we can bring social organizations like the Cardiovascular Research Foundation into more global access in interventional heart care, leveraging AR and VR technology, significantly increasing rapid uptake of technology and creating more access to care here in the U.S. and globally. So I'll just wrap it up, and maybe the last point is the idea of going from sick care to well care, we think is a really important trend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. A lot of new concepts for many of us to get our heads around, and really appreciate the examples of the case studies. Really helped me connect these concepts and the changes to what is already here. So thank you. George, do you want to provide some perspective on the financial side of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely, and let me know if everybody can hear me okay with the microphone. So I'm George. I actually sit on our JP Morgan's Life Sciences commercial banking team down in New York, but working with a lot of biotech companies in the tri-state area and being part of their growth from company formation all the way through they're a milestone type of event, going public, things of this sort. And I'd say, we actually just got back from the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference a few weeks ago. So some of the topics and the numbers that I'll highlight for you are just putting some context into what happened last year in the life sciences space, both on the public side and private side, and talk a little bit about, what our clients are hearing from their investors and what could be in store for 2023. 2022 was a tumultuous type of year, and just in general. If you can remember when the year started, I think the Omicron variant really impacted our conference in early 2022, for sure. But that went into the war in Ukraine. Inflation roared to 40-year highs. Fed hiked 7 times last year, and 8th if you include yesterday's. And a lot of these created headwinds in the market. S&P ended up the year down 20%. And a lot of the innovation stocks and companies found a capital raising environment to be a lot more difficult as they approached the year. In some ways, healthcare, because it is countercyclical, was a little bit resilient, but it really depends on which part of the spectrum that you fell into. Some of our larger biotech companies, the Mercks, the J&Js of the world, Big Pharma was actually up for the year, outperforming the market. Again, what you would normally expect in a difficult market conditions. But our smaller clients, the $2 billion or under in market capitalization, market valuation, took it on the chin. The smallest of the smallest were down 50% in 2022, found it very difficult by the end of the year to, given market conditions, to be able to raise capital. And, even if you think about maybe a broader classification, $2 billion or under, we're down approximately about 25%. And generally that's, there's a lot of different dynamics going on between that. Some, as the Fed hikes rates, cost of capital gets steeper. Ideas that were once, easily funded in 2021 now have a harder time getting funded in 2022. But I would sort of encourage you to look across the spectrum. 2 different years won't necessarily give you the idea of the entire trend line. If you look, biotech is a 40-year plus story. A lot of innovation happens in 5 to 10 year cycles instead of 1 year for the cycles. And that's more readily seen in the private side. So venture funding, as measured by PitchBook, National Venture Capital Association's annual Venture Monitor, which was released a couple weeks ago, in the entire the United States, which includes healthcare, includes technology, includes fast-growing e-commerce companies, total venture dollars were down 30%. To about $260 billion in 2022, from 2021, which was a remarkable year. But if you strip 2021 out of the numbers, the total dollars raised in 2022 set a record. So 2020, 2022 numbers were up, and you just had this big climb in 21 that sort of came right back down. Money is getting deployed. We're hearing from our clients that it may be taking longer to close out rounds, and depending on where they are in the capital raising cycle. So let's talk a little bit about the seed stage. So our seed stage clients are, and this is sort of borne out by the data that was highlighted in the PitchBook and VCA Monitor, seed stage financings are up. Makes sense. First, it's company formation. It's a chance to set a new valuation. Investments are typically going to be made, and especially in biotech, with a 5 to 10 year window. Those will happen. The later stage investments, so Series B, C, or D, companies that have prior valuations might have raised in the 2020 to 2021 timeframe, where maybe valuations were elevated based on where they were historically, are now coming back for another round. And they're encountering this scenario where the last dollar raised was at high valuation, and the next dollar raised is at a lower valuation. There's a lot of behavioral considerations that boards are taking. Do they want to take a down round? Some are okay with it, some are not. Do they want to take a down round? Are they able to create a value with less money? Can they save more money, prioritize certain things in their pipeline to survive through the cycle? Which I think everybody in this room, if we were prognosticators on when this cycle would be over, I think we'd call that our full-time job. So, when is this cycle over? So I think some of the dynamic, and I'm not an economist, but this is my own view of what's happening. Some of the dynamics around how fast the Fed hiked last year created these uncertainties among investors. And there's nothing investors hate more than uncertainty. So Fed hiked 7 times. The largest hikes were 75 basis points. The smallest one was yesterday at 25, right? And so, what's really going on? Well, some of the messaging that's being telegraphed is, have we topped out on inflation? Can investors find a more predictable pattern by the Fed and put a floor on valuations in the market? And I think if that occurs, 2023 should be a lot better of a market from a capital raising perspective. Now, some of this is, you have to kind of look at a little bit more granular of data. Like, the markets were not closed altogether last year. The IPO markets largely were, mostly because of this dynamic of last round raise was high, next round raise is low, and a lot of people don't want to take that hit. If you were public already and reporting good clinical data, the markets are open. There were around 80 financings last year. About 65% of those were follow-ons from companies that were public coming on the back of good clinical data. So that's controllable. You're controlling when you're enrolling patients in a trial, you're enrolling when that trial is reading out, and you're using that trial readout, if positive, to go out and raise more capital to deploy back into the clinic. So it is the predictable pattern of what our biotech clients normally do day to day in the backdrop of a pretty volatile environment. I think as we look out for 2023, what are we focused on? Innovation is continuing unabated. The technologies that are getting FDA approval this year, next year, potentially the year after, are game changers in this space. If you had told us 10 years ago that we're going to have an mRNA vaccine for a global pandemic, I think many people would have called you crazy. But here we are. The science proved out, and the science won. So we think that innovation will continue despite what's going on in the markets, and we hope that there is some sort of more predictable pattern with the Fed this year to put a floor on valuations so that our clients that are coming through that 2 years since they've last raised capital will be able to find better valuation settings in the market and plan for that next stage of growth.
Really, I think very positive news for all of us to move into some of the really big concepts that Teresa shared, and also for us not to lose the pipeline of investment that's been made in Series A's, Series B's, which have extremely promising and life-changing therapeutics on the way. So now that we've sort of laid out the concepts of where this is all going and the money story, which is so complicated, and thank you, George, for making it seem simple, or at least understandable. I really appreciate that. I want to talk now about what is going on here in Westchester in Burke Neurological Institute. Ratan is here to talk about some of what they are working on and how that is really going to provide us with some life-changing cures down the road. Thank you, Raj.
Oh, yeah, great. It's great to be here with all of you today for a number of reasons. One, I'm a Westchester lifer now, I guess. Next week I will celebrate 20 years of working, playing, and raising my family here in Westchester. So I love this county, and I'm really grateful to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think the second thing that makes me really happy about being here is looking out at this audience, seeing very few, if anyone, with masks, and being able to actually meet people in 3D who I've been seeing on Zoom for years now. But I think that, as George was kind of alluding to, the pandemic has taught us a lot of lessons, isn't that right? That public health is important, that public health, the best public health is driven by great science. And the final point is we can't wait till we're in the middle of a pandemic to try to figure out the solutions to those problems. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about our focus at the Burke Neurological Institute. We're located a mile and a half from here, and you're all welcome to join us afterwards for a tour of the Institute. I'm just joking. And what the epidemic that we've been really focused on is the growing epidemic of neurological diseases and the disability from neurological diseases. Just to give you a sense, and we're really talking about people who are out in the community who have nothing else that the healthcare system can offer them. If you just take stroke, the #1 cause of physical disability, and Alzheimer's disease, the #1 cause of cognitive disability in the United States, if we do nothing between now and 2050, those two diseases are going to cost us $1.4 trillion a year. And, we just heard a wonderful talk about how our costs are shifting. We have to start to do something now. So our focus at the Burke Neurological Institute is to say there are millions of people out there in the community who are disabled from neurological diseases. They don't have a clinical home, and no one is really organizing research in a way that ultimately is going to get us to solutions before 2050. And so in order to build that type of vision, you need to be able to recruit the best and the brightest. And, so I moved here, and I was very fortunate to have my previous position at Harvard Medical School. And when I told him I was moving to Burke, he said, "Oh, you'll never be able to recruit anyone there." And exactly the opposite has been true. We've grown our faculty by fourfold. We've recruited the best and the brightest. They could have gone to many other institutions in many parts of the country, and they chose to come here. And our two best examples of that recently is we have two investigators coming from Stanford Medical School who are outstanding. One of them has developed a novel microscope for identifying activity in the brain that really can recapitulate behavior, kind of where the rubber meets the road with repairing the brain. And we will have one of those microscopes here in Westchester, and there'll be one at Stanford. So I think these type of people who bring this type of exciting technology are coming here. The question also is, can we retain them? And I will tell you, we have at least 10 of our faculty who've been with us for more than 15 years. And the question you might ask is, why are they coming and why are they staying? And I think we would all agree that we love New York City, but we love access to New York City. So it's a great place to work. Your commute is better, and actually, I think we're at this wonderful stage in our development in terms of the size of the institutions that we have. So they're not 80-ton tankers, that people can come and be in institutions that are administratively supple and where they can really make a difference and where they can really grow their careers. So I wanted to finish just by telling you about a couple of our successes. You might say, well, you've recruited this great faculty, you've retained them, but what have you done? So I think the best example is a currently funded study from the NIH on a drug called benfotiamine for Alzheimer's disease. So the NIH just gave us $45 million. Gary Gibson is leading a 50-site trial in the United States. This is being nucleated here in Westchester and influencing research going on all over the country. And I think it gets to, so this drug benfotiamine happens to replete thiamine. It's a nutrient in our body, and the phase 2A results are remarkable, and it was that, on the basis of that the NIH funded this huge trial. Now, getting back to, I think another point that was made is, it's now becoming clear with Alzheimer's disease that Alzheimer's may start 15 to 20 years before you actually manifest symptoms. And so you can't start the treatments when people show up to the doctor complaining of dementia. The great thing about a nutraceutical treatment is it can be given 15 to 20 years at a cost of probably $1,000 or $1,500 a year, as opposed to a cost of $50,000 a year or $26,000 what the new drug lecanemab might cost. And I think we really have to be thinking about this because it's apparent that these diseases are becoming manifest and the brain becoming almost irreversibly damaged by the time people show up with symptoms. So I think we can figure that out too. But the second thing I wanted to highlight is we recently got $5 million from the state to set up the first clinical trials platform in chronic stroke. And many of you, as I said, stroke is a leading cause of disability, physical disability. There are 400,000 people in New York State who can't move their upper extremity because of the stroke. And that limits them from being able to cut a steak, to being able to button their buttons and be independent. We're putting together a platform that what it does is essentially creates a structure where companies can come and take advantage of this existing platform. And I think, as George was saying, what the investment community needs is certainty, isn't that right? And I think what we are proposing is these unique collaborations between government, industry, and academia can de-risk things for industry so that they don't have to they can have some certainty that a clinical trial structure exists, that we know what the endpoints are, that we can get the answer with the fewest number of patients, that we can actually recruit those patients. I think we expect to be solving all of those problems through structures like this. Other great things that are happening, and I'll just finish up quickly. One, we have an investigator who's working with an anesthesiologist at Cornell to develop a non-opiate pain medication. And they've been able to collaborate with a company. They have a lead compound. They're moving forward. It affects a particular type of channel that seems to flip a switch for chronic pain. And the great thing about this drug is that you don't have to worry about addiction. So 116 million people in the United States suffer pain every year. This is a huge public health problem. And another example of how institutions in Westchester can punch above their weight because of all the wonderful things that exist professionally. And I'll finish. We had a great conversation yesterday with one of the neuro-ophthalmologists from Weill about a technology that's being developed that allows, you know how you go into the ophthalmologist's office and they show you that Snellen chart and you have to read the letters. You may have thought of this. What do you do for people who can't communicate? How do you assess their vision? Well, Glenn Prusky and his group have developed this technology called Gradiate, which essentially uses Star Wars-like technology and allows them to assess vision in people who can't communicate in 3 minutes, and to do this quantitatively, and to be able to get a much broader spectrum of assays than you would get from just looking at a Snellen chart. And we think there is huge opportunity moving forward for combinations of biology and technology to be moving, really gaining traction on these diseases that historically have been considered intractable. So, thanks.
Thank you so much. Raj, what an incredible perspective to share about, one, the importance of the lifestyle that you can have in Westchester. What is the key thing for investors is team, right? And they want to be able to know that their team is going to hang together, that they're investing in. And if there is a lifestyle that supports more mature researchers who have these innovations, then that is a competitive advantage. Secondly, to talk about the importance of huge public health challenges in stroke, in dementia, in assessing even nonverbal, how many people have disabilities. It's almost the same number that you're talking about that are dealing with pain medication. So, I mean, these are enormous societal challenges, and to roll it back, as Teresa was talking about, into prevention and into assessing this much, much earlier than we currently have been able to. That's really an incredible opportunity for all of us. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. Let us now hear from Deborah Viola, which is just this incredible organization serving Westchester County, and what Westchester County Medical Center is providing both on the innovation side and on the delivery side today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So I always follow Raj, it seems, when we do these road shows. And then, we're the academic medical center. So I'm going to try to have as much sex appeal if I can. And I got you beat. So I'm on my campus 25 years, by the way. I'm very fond of where I am. I wouldn't be there that long, I guess, obviously. A little bit about Westchester Medical Center. We're actually part of the Westchester Medical Center Health Network. So we have 9 hospitals that cover a 6,200 square mile service area. We are the Hudson Valley region. Our campus is the tertiary quaternary hospital. We're the primary referral hospital for all other hospitals in this area. And that's not unimportant, especially when you think about clinical trials and gathering that patient data that George was talking about. I mean, I am also an economist, and I don't know that I can pretend to understand everything that's going on, but I think you're talking about how quickly we go from discovery to that marketing and commercialization. At Westchester, for us, it says, how quickly can we go from discovery to the bedside? Because for us, it's all about improving patient care outcomes and actually curing patients. We have an academic partner, of course, the New York Medical College. That's where I began my career. We are on a lovely campus in Valhalla, 12 minutes from here. And probably more surprisingly, we have one of 13 academic hospital cell manufacturing and processing facilities in the country on our campus. It is GMP certified by the FDA. And people are always surprised to hear that because it's really hard, especially for that discovery phase, to find a lab where you can move into that manufacturing and processing. We often think about, even in this area, MSK or Roswell Park or St. Jude's, we have as equally an amazing facility, again, a few exits from here, 12 minutes away. We are also within walking distance from a bioincubator. So the New York Medical College BioInc, literally, you could go from discovery, put your cell in a briefcase, and walk it up to the cell and tissue engineering lab. Okay? It's an academic medical campus that attracts talent, I think for the same reason, Raj, that you described, just the location and how beautiful Westchester County is. But if you also think about going from that discovery to phase 1, 2, 3, 4 trials, continuous learning, having all of the talent that you need on one campus, you really don't have any other asset quite like that, I think, in as beautiful space and a location for the Hudson Valley region. Some of the exciting things that I'll share, and I'm going to stay away from neuro, okay? But are we supposed to take B vitamins? Is that it? It may not work. I'll wait for your NIH $45 million study, right? Okay, yeah. But in seriousness, Teresa talked about the age of biology, and that's where we are on our campus. So obviously we do have a cell and tissue engineering lab, so it would augur that we would be in that space. We also have a top scientist and researcher, Dr. Mitch Cairo. And what we've done is we've taken our clinical centers of excellence and we've aligned them with a research excellence mission. So the Westchester Medical Center Cancer Center and the Pediatric Cancer Services that we also provide are under the leadership of Dr. Cairo. He's also our scientific and medical director for our cell and tissue lab. And so we've been able, for example, to take targeted antibody therapies, and we have 100% survival rate for childhood, adolescents, young adult Hodgkin's lymphoma, mature B-cell lymphomas, cancers. We are taking parental donors and curing children with sickle cell disease with haploid identical stem cell transplantation. We have cellular therapy studies underway looking at treating folks with mild to moderate COVID-19 and other serious infectious diseases. We are excited with some early phase studies that we have that we've received FDA IND approval in CAR T therapies and cancer vaccines. And I think what's also very exciting and innovative for us is that we're not just looking at T-cell therapies. So T-cell therapies, right, you take an individual's cells, T-cells, you bring them into a lab, you change them, and then you infuse them back to treat a cancer or a solid tumor. And that's a one-to-one experience. In natural killer cells, we have an opportunity to fine-tune them, right, so that we can prevent treatment-associated toxicities or immune-mediated, like, adverse events, which would allow donor cells to be changed in the lab and then infused back into several patients, using those cells to treat more than one patient. So in this area, we're right now focused on acute leukemias and solid tumors. So that also brings a lot of potentially leading discovery, but it also, in the age of biology, when we think about where the investments are, it is one of the largest growth areas in where dollars are going to come in, and that's in cell and gene therapies. The other piece is that we talked a bit about how great it is to live here and attracting talent. We also have to educate individuals. So on our campus, we are looking at that type of education that will produce more of, especially epidemiologists. In working with community colleges, we need more phlebotomists, we need more med techs. For us, we're taking our cell and tissue lab, we're making investments to be more in the experimental cell and therapy space. That means equipment and technologies and software. So who do we have developing that talent? We need folks who are in, quantum computing, bioengineering, AI. So if you look across the university system in the Hudson Valley, you can see, and working with the Westchester County, quite frankly, right now, is doing survey and trying to determine what type of additional educational programming we need to bring into the Hudson Valley. Because that's what's going to really stop all of this from happening. The number of clinical trials are actually down year over year and for a few years, not just because of COVID. And the number of PIs taking these on are also down. It is an incredible load to ask somebody to participate in this trial, to run these trials on our campuses, and then go through that enrollment process. And so what we're hoping here at New York Medical College, Westchester Medical Center, is to really make it easier for principal investigators to do their work on our campus. And so that's where my office also comes in. We do support investigator-initiated and industry-sponsored trials that come on, and we try to make this process as less demanding as possible so that folks can focus on what they do, and that's the science. So I think that we have a lot of support for that. It's a great asset for the county, and it's not often the academic medical center gets to share, a stage like this, so I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Deborah, thank you so much for your comments. I think there are a couple of points I'd just like to circle back on that Deborah made. One is to what Raj talked about with this combination government, industry, and academic collaboration. We're really, really fortunate with Deborah Novick and with Bridget Gibbons spearheading initiatives to go after grants to address multiple disparate issues: workforce development, clinical trials, funding, development of facilities, which are really tough to both understand what you need and build. These are really, as you can tell, very technical skills that are needed, very technical spaces that are needed, and this collaboration is really key that Deborah's talking about. The second thing is the clinical trials. As George was talking about, who is getting through this? People who have done clinical trials in the funding, who have gotten good results, and that is a big load to do a clinical trial. And it pays off. If you can get good data, then you can live to fight another day, get another round, move forward, and to be able to be thinking prospectively about what do you need to be able to run those to keep these companies not just started but moving is a real puzzle. And it involves lots of disparate skills. That all means loads of jobs if we can solve this. It means loads of opportunities for people in Westchester to get state-of-the-art treatments. These are all incredible payoffs for it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak and hear this because it's really very complex to me, and they've really helped set out what it is about Westchester that's really in a unique position right now and reflects New York being the fastest growing life science sector in the country. So we're going to take questions from the audience. Melissa, who is in the white sweater, has a mic. This is being recorded, so we're going to stop until the mic gets to you to take the question. But if anybody has some questions, it's really an extraordinary opportunity to hear from a really set of leaders here in the community. So I'll keep my eyes peeled, and in the meantime, I do have a question here, and it really pulls back to this question of equity that you had raised, Teresa. And I'd really like you to weigh in on the issue of equity and how that's going to play out, and then what you're all seeing in those areas for us. So, and if you want to put up your hand in the meantime, I'll line you up for that. Thank you.
So we have invested in, now have a Health Equity Institute in Deloitte. And it's not just within our life sciences and healthcare industry practice, but it's at the enterprise level. We have the amount of money that is that the inequities in health is costing is about we estimate about $268 billion a year. Lost productivity, the list is full on. We've got publications on this you can access. But some of the interesting and important shifts that our life sciences clients are making today to address inequities is really rethinking clinical trial design. So we are working very closely with some of the largest and also the mid-size life sciences and biotech companies to really help rethink and redesign clinical trials to ensure that there are specific objectives relative to increasing and improving equity really at the start of those trials. It's a significant shift. But what I'm inspired by, and I'm on the board at the at NJ Bio. In fact, our number one priority at the board level is health equity, and so we're working very hard on that, and also in the state of New Jersey. I mean, I'm a Westchester County resident, but there's a lot of movement in this space, and there's a lot published already. If folks are interested in kind of immersing in what's already out there relative to the data. The cost of health inequity and specific initiatives to really start to unlock greater equity. And I'm really inspired by the World Economic Forum's bringing together. In fact, they've got 9 countries and over 71 CEOs who have committed to this zero gaps, health equity gaps by 2040.
Thanks very much. Raj, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, I think it also, I think your comments, Teresa, highlight how community hospitals like those exist in Westchester can really be an important effector molecule, so to speak, for connecting to patients who have a wider demographic identity, because part of what drives recruitment into trials is trust with the doctor. And if the doctor who normally takes care of a patient says to you, I think you should participate in this trial. You participate in the trial. If you're going into, into New York City and you're trying to navigate in one of these very large medical centers and hear about a trial from someone you've never met before, the recruitment rates go way down. So it really highlights maybe as one strategy, and I think it's only one, is why we need to build clinical trial structures in the hospitals in the community. Not only does it differentiate care for those community hospitals, but it will enhance recruitment.
I think every patient should have as an option a clinical trial, quite frankly, as part of their treatment. But I want to take the flip side of that, too. Diversity in the clinical trials workforce also encourages diversity in patient enrollment, and we often forget that. So that's important to us as employers. We're one of the largest employers in Westchester County, obviously, and we have a diverse clinical trials workforce. My office is very diverse. Our clinical research coordinators, our physician staff, and our nurses. And that also fosters trust with individuals who are underrepresented in trials. We also draw, and this is true across the entire Hudson Valley region, I think sometimes people don't appreciate how diverse the patient population is here. And there are patients who could never get into Manhattan and go through what the rigors and demands of a trial. I mean, they couldn't get childcare. They couldn't afford to lose time from work. And so you have to bring these studies closer to where people live and make it manageable for them. And so I really, that's such an important point. But again, we also have to employ and train so that we can employ a diverse workforce.
Could not have said it better myself. I'm seeing it across two spots. So one is obviously there are a few startups coming out with focusing specifically on clinical trials, either to speed up the time it takes to enroll patients in trials or enroll more diverse patients in trials. So diverse demographically, diverse with specific conditions, folks that may not necessarily live near a center or an enrolling PI that could be good candidates for clinical trials. We're sort of seeing the same thing on the manufacturing side, maybe onshoring of some drug development and drug manufacturing in the U.S., avoiding shortages of key drugs that naturally create inequities about who gets that and how. It's early days, and it certainly doesn't replace the trust factor that Raj just noted with PIs, but it is garnering a greater focus between both among investors and among entrepreneurs to tackle this issue in the next 5-10 years.
Okay, we have a question back here. Melissa's coming over with a mic. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to start with Teresa, but with the advances in remote patient monitoring and virtual care, what impact do you see that having on the demand for physical facilities to treat patients both in Westchester and beyond?
So it's a question that I don't have a great answer to at this time. Maybe some of the other panelists do, but we are absolutely seeing a significant shift in what we would call kind of care to home or virtual care engagement. And I don't have the stats, I don't have the data on the, kind of the numbers in terms of the impact on physical, but I do know that we have a significant, we've seen a significant shift in home care and virtual care, and we do expect that to continue to increase, and increase for, I think, some really good reasons. Speed of access, agility of that, of that system, creating more agility in the system to move a little bit faster. In fact, I'd like to see my my orthopedic doctor for my rotator cuff, because I've got all the diagnostic work, and I got to wait 3 more weeks, and they offered me a virtual appointment to get that done faster. So maybe some of my panelists have some other thoughts.
Yeah, so maybe I can weigh in here. So I've heard both sides that visual visits have improved access for people who normally couldn't, for reasons that Deborah and Teresa mentioned, couldn't get to the doctor. But by the other side of that is that there are many rural areas that don't have Wi-Fi, and many patients who don't have a computer. And those patients are really left out of a virtual network. So I also think that there's often with technology a tendency to go very quickly from sort of what is considered the beta testing phase to implementation. And I think we have to be really careful that to be doing the studies that say, these are the things that visual visits are good for, or televisits are good for. These are the things they miss. And so you can, you really have a sense of when it's best to use them.
Super important point, and we've had a lot of comments about is it practical in the very earliest stages of innovation, because some of the implementation aspects of a new technology are just not going to work. And they have to be rethought, which is a challenge if you've come in with an idea you think is going to nail it and you just can't really get there from here. Deborah, is there anything else you want to add there?
We have a major telehealth facility and program, and that's how we also connect care across the different facilities. It's also been an asset in ambulances. So you treat a patient almost immediately as soon as they're in an ambulance. The EMT team is communicating with the physician at the facility. That's amazing, and that's worked really well. In areas where there are shortages, like psychiatry, our telepsych program, especially in dealing with what's called that long COVID population, that's been a tremendous asset. But I do agree with Raj. I mean, I think you have to trial it, and you have to understand where acceptance and take-up might be greater in some communities and why, and with some populations. So I know we have a study, for example, looking at Latina women and their acceptance of telehealth visits that counsel them during pregnancy. So, I mean, we just can't assume that this is going to work really well with every population. And so, again, a great area of research, right? And once again, if you're on an academic medical campus, this is where you have possibilities of doing those types of studies. So I agree. I think it's tremendous, but it needs to be studied.
Thank you very much. I want to ask you all to join me in thanking this panel for this conversation. And I'd like to introduce Deborah Novick, the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship for Westchester County, the co-lead for this event this morning, to provide some final remarks. Deborah?
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Teresa and George and Raj and Deborah. It's been really a great discussion, and it's such a pleasure for me to see this full room of people who are taking an interest in what's happening in the life sciences here in Westchester. Bridget and I often say that we see our role as convening people. We're all so busy, and it's hard to get out of your office, out of your silo, and find out what other people are working on. And so these gatherings are just a great opportunity to learn some of the things that are happening and get to meet some people that you maybe haven't done business with before. And so I really appreciate you all coming out, and I thank you for sharing your expertise with us. I invite you all to meet and greet and get to know each other a little bit more outside. There's plenty more coffee and snacks. So thank you again for being here with us this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day.